If you're brand new to the Luigi Mangione case and you're wondering why it is Devil's Advocates covers Luigi Mangione, that POS that shot and killed an innocent man on the streets of Manhattan, and why would you possibly defend him, this is the story for you. What is the deal with Luigi Mangione? Why am I covering it? And what do I need to know to get myself up to speed on why you're doing what you do? All right, I've prepared this little slideshow to basically try to walk you through in about 15 minutes or less, hopefully much less, a Luigi Mangione. This is on screen Luigi Mangione. And yes, there's a collective sigh from the women in the audience who watch this. Luigi Mangione is a fairly attractive male who seems to garner a lot of female attention. In fact, if you look at the next slide in my series, you'll see why. Good old shirtless Luigi Mangione, good looking, fit young man in his 20s. He's got a bit of swagger. No, he's got a lot of swagger. This, in one of these pictures up here where you see my mouse maybe moving right here, is Luigi Mangione at his perp walk where he had a million people behind him with machine guns perp walking him. He had a swagger. He had a confidence. A lot of women found him extremely attractive in that moment, despite the fact that it was a very serious moment in which he was being perp walked because he had been arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and brought to New York for charges of first-degree murder. Very, very serious charges. Here's another picture of Luigi Mangione that was supposedly taken before the shooting, before they knew who he was. There was a masked gunman that shot Brian Thompson on the streets of New York. We're going to talk about who Brian Thompson is, who Luigi Mangione is, what the allegations are, and why, a possible motive for why the murder was done, and then we'll get back to it. But for now, I want to take a look at this picture up in the corner. A lot of people say that doesn't look like Luigi Mangione. It looks a lot more like Jake Gyllenhaal, the actor. Yet officers in Altoona, Pennsylvania, who saw Luigi Mangione having a hash brown in the morning 9 or 5 days after the shooting, said they immediately recognized Luigi Mangione as the shooter in New York from that picture right there. There's Mangione being rushed into a courtroom or a jailhouse, I think, after he'd been transported. There's Luigi Mangione on his escape, allegedly, from New York, where he took a selfie picture, if you will, from the back of a cab. I say selfie because the cab had a camera looking right between those things, and it's almost like Luigi Mangione or the shooter leaned up to purposely get this mugshot taken. And is that Luigi Mangione? Again, people argue about whether it is. And this is Luigi Mangione in the lower corner, which as a young man who's on vacation in Hawaii or somewhere in Asia at the time. He had to travel before he kind of dropped off the grid before the shooting, about 6 months before the shooting. So again, this is Luigi Mangione. This is the face that everybody's talking about. This is the man who did allegedly. Let's not forget that at the Devil's Advocates, we believe in the presumption of innocence until proven guilty in a court of law. Now, by the time you watch this particular video, it may be that Luigi Mangione has entered a plea of, yeah, I did it, but here's why I did it, because that's coming up. September 16th, 2025 is a court date in which Luigi Mangione may be changing his plea from not guilty to, yeah, maybe I'm guilty, but here's why I did it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And again, that will in essence be potentially some old news on this video that's going to bring people up to speed. This here is the person who was shot and killed in Manhattan. This is Brian Thompson, the CEO or former now CEO of United Healthcare, the largest health insurance company in the United States. They are the largest overseer of Medicaid, Medicare in the United States. And the reason why he was shot is the whole focus of this murder, we believe. Brian Thompson was on his way in Manhattan on December 4th, 2024 to an investment conference to talk to investors about how much money investors could expect to make this coming year by investing their stock in United Healthcare or United Health Group. Now, the United Health Group is the parent company for United Healthcare. So Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare, was going to an investor conference to tell them about how much money they were going to make this next year. The shooter took an opportunity while Brian Thompson was walking across the street from the hotel where he stayed the night before to the investor conference where he was going to be speaking in about an hour or so, and shot him in the back at point blank range, essentially about 10 feet away, and then got away, walked across the street, grabbed an e-bike, rode into Central Park, disappeared for some time off of cameras, came out another exit, led the entire city of New York on a manhunt for the shooter, and somehow slipped everyone and got away. 5 days later in Altoona, Pennsylvania, Luigi Mangione allegedly, well, we know Luigi Mangione was not allegedly arrested. He was arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania. The question becomes, the $1 million question, is Luigi Mangione the same person who shot Brian Thompson? Because again, at the beginning of this case, that was the $1 million question. Was the man arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania, the same person as the shooter? The shooter had a mask on. Luigi Mangione in Altoona, Pennsylvania had a different colored mask on, not a black gator as you see in the shooting, but rather a blue surgical mask. Many things didn't add up exactly. Even the shoes, some people say, wasn't the same shoes. So there's questions as to whether Luigi Mangione, who was picked up in Altoona, Pennsylvania, was indeed the shooter. Now, I want to talk a little bit about motive. We're not going to get into all of the details about why Luigi Mangione might not have been the shooter, but there is plenty of videos on my channel. If you go to, I'll show you at the end, my channel, Devil's Advocates, here on YouTube, and there's 78 videos, I think, to date of this video on Luigi Mangione, including a good 5 or 6 that are on the arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania alone. We break down court documents. We read the legal documents on screen with highlights. I've had attorneys on there talking about it. It's a deep dive into the nuances of this case. But here at the heart on the screen is what we're looking at as potential motive. Here you'll see, for example, United Healthcare back from 2010. The orange line is the S&P. That is, your regular stocks and bonds and how they trade and what their levels are at. And then the blue line is United Healthcare. And look at the enormous jump in value and price that United Healthcare took from 2010 to 2018 alone. During this time, United Healthcare was doing certain things like employing Brian Thompson and others to increase the profits of United Healthcare. And they did so mightily. And they did so, as it turned out. Look at some of these headlines. United Healthcare is under antitrust investigations by the Department of Justice, DOJ. United Healthcare Group is being investigated. That's the parent company, is being investigated by DOJ. So yes, United Healthcare, the daughter company, and United Health Group, both were under investigation as partnership. United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, up here in the corner, was killed while DOJ was investigating the executives for insider trading and monopoly. Yes, that's true. United Health, down here in the lower corner, United Health Company reveals it's facing DOJ investigations over Medicare billing practices. So what's going on, and what was leading up to this premise? Well, again, United Healthcare, under the direction of Brian Thompson and Andrew Whitty, who's his boss in United Health Group, had started employing AI to reject people's claims more and more in health insurance. The more claims that got rejected, the more money the company made and the more their profits went up. And so they were implementing a plan that, by some estimates, was wrong about 85% of the time to reject someone's claims. And they would do that on purpose. They hired AI to automatically reject claims. Hey, I submitted a claim. I need to get this coverage. Denied. And then you would have to fight as a person to get that claim through the system after they denied you. Those denials were wrong over 80 something percent of the time. And so this is at the heart of why some people were starting to protest outside United Healthcare's headquarters, saying United Health is essentially killing people, that their practices are letting people die while people have to fight for urgent care that they need, and they're playing games with people to make more profit. So for those of you who say, why the hell, Devil's Advocates, would you ever consider defending this piece of shit who shot a man on the streets of Manhattan for doing nothing more than doing his job? Keep in mind, his job was to make his shareholders more money. To make his shareholders more money, they employed AI to deny people's claims. Therefore, in argument, I'm not saying that this is the case. I'm saying the argument is they are killing thousands of people on a regular basis. The shooter shot one man to try to affect change. That is one of the arguments that it faces. Now, that's the most likely. If you're following this case, that is the most likely scenario about why Brian Thompson was shot. Someone was sick of this shit you see on the screen. United Healthcare being predatory, putting profits over people, letting people die, including their grandmothers and their spouses and their parents and whatever. Real people are dying while they're playing games to make their shareholders more money. So somebody, it seems like, decided that this was a war on America, that they had declared war on America, and passing legislation doesn't help. Going to Congress and trying to get them to investigate through the DOJ isn't helping. And by the way, at the heart of this argument for you to try to get up to speed real quick. The department, if you notice, there are several things about here about insider trading and things like this. What happened, for example, as one example, as the Department of Justice was seeing that United Healthcare was doing all kinds of things to make an unfair practice in America. They were taking over. They were creating a monopoly. They were buying smaller companies related to the health insurance industry so that they could basically buy everyone from top to bottom and control the entire market. The Department of Justice came in and said, no, that is antitrust violations. You are making a monopoly. You need to stop that immediately. They got judges to sign off and say, keep doing what you're doing. Keep making that monopoly. It's okay. There was a war between the Department of Justice and some judges in lower levels. It was a huge shitstorm. And no matter what the government did to try to shut United Healthcare down and stop this practice, they kept doing it. So somebody may have decided to take it in their hands to try to stop this system that even the DOJ couldn't do. And one more thing about that Department of Justice thing, I've got a website that we will talk about, which is devilsadvocates.info, in which I've got a follow the money section, which is I'll trace that money. I'll trace to you how the executives, Brian Thompson, for example, and Andrew Whitty, sold off a shit ton of their own personal stock in United Healthcare prior to the public being told they were under investigation by Department of Justice. Why is this important? That's the insider trading argument. They personally knew that a public announcement was going to get made that will hurt their stock prices and make the stock prices plummet, which is that they might be broken up. The government might come in and break up the United Healthcare and make them sell off some of their parts of their company and disband a little bit. That would hurt their bottom line. It would destroy some things. So you know what happened? Brian Thompson and Andrew Whitty sold out a shit ton of their own stocks while the prices were super high. And then when it came out in public that they were under investigation by the Department of Justice, a whole bunch of people now had a shit stock price and they lost their asses. They got sued by the Hollywood Department fire and pension plans. Again, Hollywood in Florida, not in California, by the way. But the point being is they got sued multiple ways because had they known that the stock was going to drop, they wouldn't have invested in their in pension plans, for example, in United Healthcare stock. Sorry, this is getting a little deep. There's more stuff on my website about it. Let's continue on. Here, then, for example, is the heart of what's happening in America. Why Luigi Mangione is such a controversial thing. Luigi Mangione is becoming, because of this, a bit of a folk hero in some people's minds. In other words, United Healthcare is seen by a lot of people, a lot more than the media would like you to believe, as United Healthcare was a predator. They were basically making profits over people. They were putting people's lives at risk. And so a show came out, Law and Order, as you see on the screen. Law and Order had an episode called Folk Hero, where they depicted the shooter, Luigi Mangione, in this fictionalized version of Law and Order. By the way, is an interesting side tangent. Karen Agnifilo, who's the lawyer for Luigi Mangione, is an advisor to Law and Order. That's a super interesting little thing. So here's Law and Order. here's the headline. I'm frustrated at the cop-out ending of Law and Order when in Luigi Mangione's inspired case. So there's Luigi in this picture. There's Ethan, who portrays him, an actor who portrays Luigi Mangione essentially in this fictionalized character in this fictionalized series. And by the way, I've got a whole breakdown of that Law and Order thing. But what I'm saying is people at the end of the day started to believe that Luigi Mangione and this fictional character might be a folk hero. He was trying to stand up for the little people who are facing a predatory system. And that show talks about the possibility of a mental health defense, that this individual could have killed Brian Thompson to save lives, that it was a self-defense kind of situation, that by killing Brian Thompson, maybe this would stop the predatory practices and maybe more lives will be saved in the long run. That argument, I've had attorneys on my show say, is a long argument to make in the courtroom, and I totally agree. But yet, that's what this fictional series is about, and it's something to pay attention to. Thomas Dickey is another name that you want to know and see. Thomas Dickey was the first attorney for Luigi Mangione in Pennsylvania. So Thomas Dickey practices law in Pennsylvania. He's the one that said, by the way, Luigi Mangione was illegally arrested in Pennsylvania, and that is true. It is an illegal arrest. I got about 5 documents or 5 videos that are an hour and something long, breaking down how very, very, very illegal the arrest of Luigi Mangione was in Pennsylvania. And then they extradited him to New York to face charges in New York. I'm having a real hard time getting this down in 15 minutes, so let's move on. Recognize this name. This is Thomas Dickey in Pennsylvania. He's fighting having Luigi Mangione be able to face charges in person in Pennsylvania while the federal government holds him. Here now is the big, big fish on campus, Karen Agnifilo. She's seen center with her husband, Mark Agnifilo. Interesting side tangent. Mark Ignifilo just represented P. Diddy in the P. Diddy trial. These are big name attorneys. Karen Ignifilo here is a hotshot attorney who is amazing at what she does. So, regardless of how you feel about it, Karen Ignifilo is a name you must understand and you must know. Get used to her face. You're going to see it a lot during this trial. We'll move on. I got a million things about her. Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, who indicated that I got orders from Trump to execute Luigi Mangione. He must be put to death as one of the most dangerous men in America. That's entirely a joke. That should have never happened. I got a bunch of arguments about that. Karen Ignifilo is arguing what makes Luigi Mangione more dangerous than anyone else in the United States. So pay attention to that name. Here you got 2 court cases highlighted. There are 3 jurisdictions Luigi Mangione is facing. He's facing charges in Pennsylvania for basically false identification and forgery of documents in Pennsylvania, as well as having illegal possession of a firearm, which they believe was used in the commission of the murder. But then in the state, you've got the People versus Mangione, and he's facing there an act of terrorism. Karen Ignifilo is arguing there is no act of terrorism in Luigi Mangione's charges. How does it rise to the level of an act of terrorism? Down here in the bottom in the corner, you see the United States versus Luigi Mangione. That is in the Southern District of New York. That's the federal government trying to put Luigi Mangione to death. So you can see that Luigi Mangione faces the death penalty according to that thumbnail. So there are multiple cases against Luigi Mangione. He's fighting charges in Pennsylvania with Thomas Dickey as his lead attorney, and he's fighting the People versus Mangione in the state of New York with Karen as his attorney, and he's also fighting the U.S. versus Mangione in the federal government in New York. So New York State has 2 different jurisdictions fighting for him in the same place, and Karen is his attorney, along with her husband now, Mark, as co-counsel or assistant counsel in that. LuigiMangioneInfo.com is a website that you want to get familiar with. This is run by his attorneys itself. You can see in the lower corner, they've got a case updates that talks about the federal case, the New York State case, and the Commonwealth Pennsylvania case with all the latest motions that the defense has filed and the responses by the prosecution. It is the place you need to go to keep up on relatively new news. Now, we tend to break things a little faster here on the website than even that page. And let's try to get this done in, I guess, 16 minutes or so, which is final thing. Luigi Mangione's case here. I've got a playlist. It's down here. If you can see where I'm circling on the screen with my mouse, the People versus Mangione thumbnail. That'll change because I think it's always showing my most recent thumbnail. But look at the title of the playlist. Luigi Mangione, 78 videos on my thing. Tons of videos to give you everything you need for the background. But the big names you have to know and understand is Thomas Dickey's attorney in Pennsylvania, Karen Ignifilo, his attorney in New York, and the federal government in New York. So the state and the federal government, that's Karen Ignifilo and her husband, Mark Ignifilo. Pam Bondi's just an afterthought. Brian Thompson, of course, you have to know. Luigi, you have to know. And then you have to pay attention to how are you going to deal with this monumental case? They violated Luigi Mangione's constitutional rights, civil liberties several times. Maybe you don't care because he shot an innocent man and father or 2 in the back, and that man was just doing his job. That's a conversation for another day, but you should be up to speed now. And if you want to dig deeper, go through my videos. You'll learn a ton. Thank you very much.